Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Welcome, my friends, to episode 22 of the Modern Leadership Podcast. In recent episodes, we have been talking about influence and becoming a positive influencer within our organizations, as well as building our personal brand. Guys, leadership is influence. And today, I have a special treat for you. My guest today, Bobby Albert. Let me introduce Bobby, currently president of Values Driven Leadership, LLC. His passion is helping leaders build inspiring workplace cultures, grounded in values and powered by the twin engine of enhancing relationships and driving for results. Bobby helps leaders chart a proven path to extraordinary results. Bobby has started 12 businesses and acquired 9 others. So if you're keeping score at home, that's a lot of companies. His approach to business has been to value people, seek wisdom, embrace humility, and never stop learning. Bobby, welcome to the Modern Leadership Podcast. How are you today?
Man, I'm having a great day, and it's just a pleasure to be part of your show today.
Well, we love on the podcast to bring on guests that have done different things in life, that have really stretched and gone towards this goal of success in different and unique ways. And I got to tell you, 21 companies is a lot of companies. And I want to talk about that just a little bit. But before I do, was there anything we missed in that intro? Anything about your personal life you'd like to share with us?
Oh, sure. I'd love to. My father started our business in 1938. It was a furniture, upholstery, and refinishing business. And in the late 50s, this is kind of before, there was a lot of retail stores, furniture retail stores. And in the late 50s, we would basically redo all, the furniture in a home. And often people found themselves also were moving. So they were scared the movers are going to tear everything up. So people started asking us to also move them. Well, we found ourselves in the moving business. And so I grew up mainly over on the side of the moving side. And as a little kid, I mean, like a real little kid, I would hang out around the warehouse and those kind of things. And they used to call me the automatic pad folder. That's like the blankets that are used to wrap the furniture. And boy, I thought I went to heaven when I had that job. But what it was a way to get me out of it, out of their way. But one thing I didn't know it at the time, but later on I learned that nobody wanted to fold the pads. Well, the reason why back then, I'm embarrassed to say, they didn't clean them. And they were just filthy dirty. And so nobody wanted that job. Well, years later, when I was in junior high school, in some areas they call it middle school, my dad let me go out on my first moving job. Now, one thing that was very interesting is at that time, he said, "Now, Bobby, when you go out there, I don't want you to behave like the boss's son." Now, I'm when I look back on it, I don't know as a kid at that age how I understood it, but I understood exactly what he meant. And so I would take like one break to there two. I would run between the truck and the home and the home and the truck when we were doing the loading and unloading. And I would do all the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. And I didn't realize how valuable that was until later on. I even went to the university here locally, and I was very fortunate that I was able to start college at the age of 17, and I finished in 3 years. But within 1 month in 1973, after I graduated from the university, my father died of a heart attack. And that thrust me into becoming now the leader of this family business that only had 5 employees. But it's a lot of money today. But back then in 1973, our business was $70,000 in debt, and our total gross revenue was less than 90,000. So it was an extremely challenging time. In fact, my wife still reminds me I used to give her $20 a week just to go buy groceries. But through a lot of people helping me over the years, mentoring me over the years, was able in 2011 to sell our company to a public traded company and we had over 150 employees.
You know, the reason I love to bring on different guests on this show is because the history and the background is so unique and so different, and we can learn so much from it. And just in that little story there is so much value packed in, and I want to go back and talk about a few things. So you grew up in a family that prized entrepreneurship. Your father started a business and had basically taught you from a young age that, to feed the family, we need to go out and we need to work. Is that how I understand the story?
Exactly. And my dad and I had a great relationship with my dad, and he taught me so much. I hung out with my dad all the time. I mean, as a little boy, I knew I went with him to visit the bankers, to go to the place that repaired our trucks, the insurance company, even back then, the service, the gasoline service company, back then it was full service. I knew the people that, put the fuel in the trucks and those kind of things.
And so what kind of advantage does that give to a young person when they get to not just read about it, not just study about it, not just here's the business books, go out and learn it, but when they actually participate in it, and not just at 15, 16, 17, but at a young age? What advantage did that offer to you?
Well, that's an interesting question, because shortly after I'm now the leader of the company, I had to have a fierce conversation with these 5 employees to ask them to take a pay cut. Now, I mean, for a kid I was 20 years old, to have that kind of conversation. These are people, it was men at that time, and I had worked side by side these people. They taught me everything I knew about how out there on the trucks in the warehouse, how the business is supposed to be done. But what was amazing to me is that 100% of them accepted a pay cut, and I had to do it for us to have some kind of survival, even though it still was not going to, it was still a bleak picture for us. But I think they did it out of the admiration and respect of my dad, but they also respected because they knew I could outwork, any of them out there on the trucks.
And so it's obvious to me that you were a go-getter. I mean, they saw this as you were growing up, your first time out on the truck, and probably every time after that. You're taking one break to their 2. You were a go-getter. You start college at 17. You get through it in 3 years. You graduate at 20. Did you have dreams and ambitions of working in your father's company, of taking it over someday, or did you have some other idea in mind?
Boy, that's a very good question. I did not have any clue or any desire to be running the company. I was planning on going to law school, and I had taken, the testing to be able to enter. I submitted, applications and was awaiting for my acceptance when all that happened. So.
Well, as a recovering attorney myself, having gone to law school, I'm telling you, you didn't miss out on a whole lot. But what I think is interesting is in life, good things happen, opportunities happen, doors open, and we're not always expecting that they open, and they're not always where we think they're going to be. And obviously, losing your father, someone that you were very close to, someone that you had worked closely with over a number of years, I imagine was a very difficult experience for you to go through. But it also opened a door for you that you have now taken your whole career in this direction. And when you look at, $70,000 in debt and $90,000 in revenue, you can tell just from those 2 numbers, you don't need to be an accountant to know that the company was in trouble. They needed some leadership. Now you come in as a leader and start making a difference, and you talk about pay cuts. What are some of the other things you did to get this company turned around? How do you go from 5 people, with pay cuts and 20 years old freshly graduated to 150 employees and a publicly traded company acquiring you?
Well, one thing was quite obvious is we were revenue starved. And fortunately, is a close friend of mine that was at the university, worked as an intern at an accounting firm, and he got me connected up with a CPA to help me. And there were three bankers that my dad dealt with. And be honest with you, two of the three wanted to go ahead and shut us down because they just couldn't. Here's a 20-year-old kid, and they knew my history because I was president of student body at the university. They knew my history, and they had seen me over the years, but they still think of me as a little boy. But fortunately, I don't know how, but one of the banker convinced the other two to go ahead and give me a chance. And so since we were revenue starving, I just started thinking, I've got to figure out how to bring more revenue in. And that was the start of me looking at various different businesses or starting businesses that almost didn't even exist in the marketplace, no matter where you lived. And just one by one, we started bringing more revenue in and more revenue. And pretty soon we became not only a local company, but in the early 80s, we started servicing business on a national level. We were moving people like from Los Angeles to Chicago, and from Florida to Virginia, from the state of Washington to the state of Connecticut. And that really kind of stimulated taking beyond the local market, is looking at a bigger market to achieve the kind of revenue and profits that we experience.
So a couple of things I want to ask you about that. First of all, when the company started, it was more of a reupholstery business. It was fixing up, repairing some of the furniture that people would bring in. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that market started to disappear, and you started to see this need and this growth in the moving market. And that's one thing that I like to point out to the listeners, and that is, when you're in a market, you need to keep your finger on the pulse of the market, and you need to see where that market is going. And I have a friend who was working for years in the 80s in the small appliance repair business. If the toaster went out, you could bring it to him and they would fix your toaster.
Yes.
Nowadays, we go down to the Walmart, we pick up a new toaster for $5. Nobody's paying to get the toaster repaired. Now, if you don't have your finger on the pulse of the economy in your niche, then you're going to miss that, and you're going to continue to repair toasters until there are no toasters to repair. And so the one thing I wanted to pull out from your story is, while you started in the upholstery repair or the reupholstery business, you saw where the market was going. Now, I've heard it said, and maybe you've seen this in your experience a little bit, that oftentimes a founder has this one type of brain or this one type of business expertise that can really go out and start a business, get the ball rolling, start pushing that boulder up the hill. But often you see that the second generation, and sometimes even the third generation that comes in and takes over a family business, takes it to that next level, or basically gets that boulder to the top of the hill and then starts rolling it down the other side. Which, as we look at, your father starting the business in 1938, in early 70s, you take over. He'd been in business for quite a while. He had 5 employees. So what was it about your thinking, or about, the second generation taking over this business, that was able to drive it from, a small mom and pop, here we are within our local economy, to nationwide growth?
That's a very insightful question. And it's interesting, as just you pointed out, talking about family succession planning. Of course, it was years later I found out that the chances of me being a second generation being successful, it's like in the almost like single digits. It's been a while since I've looked at that, and that's one reason. My wife and I have 3 boys, and when I was I was thinking about their someday not to work at managing the business, but to run to be part of our board of directors, and they would hire professional managers to run the company. So because I knew just what you were pointing out, the chances of that third generation being successful, it's low single digits. So that's something, on family succession planning. But I think I'm just one of those people. I like challenges. And it was like, my goodness, okay, I've got this challenge, but I have these resources in front of me. What can I do? How can I convert all these resources to something greater than myself? And so I spent years. I've just scraping because I had a greater purpose I was trying to achieve, and we were taken care of. So we were very blessed.
Well, and it's interesting when you dissect some of the successes that people have had and what has kept them going. And it wasn't a paycheck. I mean, if you have 2 out of 3 bankers telling you as 20-year-old, you're applying to law school, you think you have one plan. 2 out of 3 bankers are telling you your plan to keep this company going ain't going to work. Why don't you go to law school? It takes more than just, I want a paycheck to get you over that hump. And so I can see that as you take over this company, it was the face of that challenge that really ignited you, that really got you excited. And then you said, look, this is the challenge. I'm going to make this work. And my big pull-out takeaway from that is what got you here ain't going to get you there. What got you to the point of having 5 employees local wasn't going to get to the point of where you had to go after that. And in a couple of weeks from when this episode goes live, sitting down with the author of the book, Disrupt Yourself, Whitney Johnson, really going to dive into that of, what got you here ain't going to get you to where you need to go, and you need to make some changes. So then you go through this career progression where you take this company and you build it up to success. It sells out in 2011, and you find yourself now, after spending years and years building this company and basically your entire lifetime working in this company. What happens then? Where do you go from there?
Well, I had the sale of the company was really unplanned and unscheduled. It really kind of came out of the blue because I was making plans. We had a strategic plan that we were going to take our company to a much greater level than I could even finance or, had the ability. So I was already visiting with capital funds in Dallas, Texas, to help me fund my dream to grow the company. I was also interviewing people to serve as members of a board of directors. So one thing that emotionally I was already knowing I was going to have to give up full ownership of the business. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I had already had a business succession plan where the chief operating officer, the COO of our company, was going to become the president. I was going to, become the chairman of this board of directors, and I was going to start living out what I call my second half of life, and it's really kind of doing what I'm doing now. It happened sooner than I expected when this offer came out of the blue, and they were very, very generous. It was a very successful buy by them, and I came away happy, and they were too. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talked about, right? That you can't plan for some of these things as the doors open. And so now you find yourself, you're building this new business, these new companies. And part of what I want to focus on now, being the Modern Leadership Podcast, is leadership. And one of the things that you do, and one of the things you stand for, is this values-based, values-driven leadership. And so talk to us a little bit about Values-Driven Leadership LLC and what you are up to with that.
Okay. For many years in our company, we had a purpose statement and we had a vision statement, and our people regularly heard me talk about it. One of the things that was missing was what was our core values. And I didn't understand this until 2005, and is when I finally discovered who I was, and that was our core values. Now, this is something that is driven by the leader, by the founder of the company, that is the core values. And I spent 2.5 years, and I use the term introspectively, observing my behavior. And it was hard. That's the reason why it took me so long. And I mean, our leadership team, I'd say, would you just tell me who I am so I can get this over with? Because this is driving me nuts. I'd ask myself questions like, what did I stand for? What am I all about? Why did I say what I just said? Why did I do what I just did? And why was it important that I said it that way and did it that way? And it was hard this self-awareness. It was hard to go through, but finally, it was like one Sunday afternoon, I sat down and I call it my thinking chair. And it was like, I'm ready to find out who I am. And so I asked myself, okay, what are the things that I have a passion for, things that I get excited about, things that give me energy, things that I really like doing. And so I listed some words down to describe that behavior. And then I started thinking, well, I'm going to look on the other side of the coin, like you would do a T-chart, and think about, okay, when those things are not done, what happens, and I started thinking, I get angry, I get mad, I get foaming at the mouth when they're not done. So I made a list of words to describe my behavior on that. And then I was looking at it, and I realized that there were words on both sides of the ledger there that looked the same. So I circled those words, and they end up being 6 of them. And when I looked at them, I was thinking, my goodness, that is who I am. And those core values were already in our company for all those years. It's just that I finally figured out how to express it. And our HR department was also hiring people based on those, even though they didn't know what they were, because they knew what Bobby Albert were the kind of people he was looking for. So in 2005, we shut down the company for a half a day, and we introduced our core values to our employees. And there were kind of 3 aspects. It took a full half a day. And what this would be the process is that we would play, many people are familiar with the game show on television called The Wheel of Fortune. Well, we played, each table of employees, of 6 to 8 employees per table, would play a game we call it the Wheel of Values, to discover core value number 1. Because I needed them to go through a discovery process, even though it was just going to be a short time. But part of this is I've learned over the years when we shut down the company for a half a day for these kind of meetings is I needed to be a time of discovery, of fun and things like that. And of course, the table that figured out the phrase got to go to a spinning wheel to spin for prizes for their table. So everybody was, it was like pressure. People were on to play this game. Well, after we came to that phrase, it was, it came out through the game. I would share why that was important to me. And I went back to stories when I was a little boy, where I started realizing where it was coming from. And then each table had their own flip chart to go to, and they went to those flip charts to discuss how we're going to live out that core value in our company. And then we come back for big group discussion. Well, after that half a day, it's by style. I go around and talk to people, how did the day go? Anything I could learn, could we do better? It was consistently over and over and over that our employees kept saying, Bobby, this is who we are. This is who we are. It was like a big light bulb went off in everybody's head, like it was that Sunday afternoon for me. And from 2005 to 2011, when I, sold the company. During that time period, you know what the economic situation was going in late '07, of course, '08, and so forth.
Yeah, not good at all.
Not good at all. But during that time, our revenue grew about 5 times, and our profits grew over 5 times during that time period. And the first 2 years that we applied in 2010 and 2011, we were awarded the 100 best companies to work for in the state of Texas.
That is amazing. Congratulations on getting that. And one of the things I want to unpack from that is you said that what the employees were saying over and over again is this is who we are. And it appears to us that we are drawn towards what we believe. If you believe something, if you feel certain values towards a company or towards life, you're drawn towards companies that have those same values, that even if you weren't expressing them, that they were there. They were just under the surface. So my question to you, Bobby, is, how can we, each of us, all the listeners on the podcast, we're sitting in our thinking chairs, it's Sunday afternoon. How do we get to the point where we're open to that, where we have that light bulb moment instead of pushing it away as, you did for a number of years? What gets us to the point of being open-minded to experience this change?
I think the key is and I've prepared now, I've taken those questions, I've got in a document, it's called a, core values discovery process, but is to take those type of questions and start, it's this self-awareness. It's asking ourselves, challenging ourselves as to, this why who am I? It's these deep, deep questions that they don't come up like a quick answer to things. And it's this is a key here, and it's also a leadership issue. It's a process, not an event. I come across often, leaders that maybe have read a book or something or listen to a podcast like this one. And so they go home and, they're going to stay home maybe this morning and they're going to knock this thing out. See what this, and it's not something you can just sit down and knock out. It's a process over time. Before I discovered who I was I came up with a phrase. And that was that I wanted to be a values-driven company that achieved results, not a results-driven company that has values. And today, I find many leaders are driving so hard for results, they've lost sight of the foundational pieces of their business that can get their people where their people thrive and profits soar.
And that's a big reason that I started the Modern Leadership Podcast, because I absolutely agree with you. It's what I'm seeing on the horizon. I'm seeing far too many companies focusing on results to the exclusion of their team, to the exclusion of the family that they have built of employees, and they're just focused on the bottom line. They're just focused on results. And so the idea behind modern leadership is influence. The idea is a leader can be an influencer to change their company and to change the way that their company operates by looking at those things that are important beyond the results. Now, the results will follow. I think it's like dominoes. If you get the right values set up first, when you start knocking them down, all of a sudden you've got the results. Those two go hand in hand. But you've got to understand who you are. I love the terminology that you used, Bobby, and that is guided discovery. It's not something that you can knock out in one afternoon sitting over at Starbucks. It's something that you need to create throughout your whole career. You need to be constantly refining and changing and looking at what's important to you. And then you'll have these moments of inspiration when the timing's right. These sitting in our thinking chair on Sunday where you will realize, bingo, this is a value that I absolutely hold true to in my company, in my life, in my family, whatever it is that you're thinking about. So I appreciate that. I'm looking at our time here, Bobby. We're running just a little bit short and we haven't gotten to my favorite section, our learning from leaders. Can we jump into that for a few minutes?
Yeah, let's do.
You'll love this part. This is where we just bounce through 5 or 6 rapid fire questions just to get to know you a little bit better as an individual. So first question is, book currently on your Kindle or bedside table?
It's the Servant Leader by Ken Blanchard.
And Ken Blanchard, also the author behind the 1 Minute series and everything like that, very influential in the management arena. So the Servant, what was the title?
The Servant Leader.
The Servant Leader by Ken Blanchard. Perfect. How about best movie ever made?
Well, I don't watch a lot of movies, but I love taking my grandkids to the show to see the animated kids show. And it just, all of them, I just enjoy the kids shows.
What's the most recent one you've seen?
It was Sing.
Okay.
That's what it's called, Sing, S-I-N-G.
It's sad for me to tell you this, but I have kids and I've never heard of that. That's because my kids don't get taken out to the movie quite enough. So we'll have to go check that one out. I know they want to see some Batman Lego movie, so we'll have to get out and see that.
Yeah.
How about your leadership superpower?
Well, I went to your website before this and went through, the process, and it came up. It said problem-solving leadership.
Well, and as we've talked for the last half hour, I can really see problem-solving leadership coming from a guy who said, look, I'm taking over this company at 20 years old, and I'm going to fix this $90,000 in debt. And in, a few short years, we're going to go ahead and build this into a company that a massive company will want to take and have under their wing. So I can see that problem solver in you. How about a motivational quote, philosophy, or mantra?
Well, the one I shared earlier is that I want to be a values-driven company that achieve results, not a results-driven company that has values.
Excellent. How about one leadership trait that you could leave to your children or to the next generation?
Well, it is to achieve significance. And to me, that means to make a difference in people, for people, and through people.
And finally, the best book ever written.
Well, for me, and if I can bring my faith into this, is my Bible.
Well, we've had a couple of interviews recently that book has come up, and I guess it's the #1 world's best-selling book and stood the test of time for some reason. There must be something good in there, right?
Yes.
Well, wonderful. Well, thanks for playing along with our Learning from Leaders section. It is one of my favorites because we get a little bit deeper into who you are and kind of the background to how you're making some of the decisions you're making. So I appreciate that. Now, before I let you go today, can you give us any last minute advice? And then, of course, tell us how we can get in touch.
Oh, surely. I'd love to do that. People can get in touch with me at, it's pretty simple, Bobby, Bobby, Albert, ALBERT.com/ML. That stands for Modern Leadership. And when you go to my website, you can download free. We got 5 steps to personal goal setting. And soon, very soon, I will have my new book out called Principal Profits. And the subtitle is Outward Success is an Inside Job.
Well, we're going to go ahead and link that up on the show notes for this episode. Encourage all the listeners to go over and check out bobbyalbert.com/ML and get those key steps to setting goals. Bobby, on this podcast, the listeners are achievers here. The listeners of this podcast want 10x growth, not just in their business, but in their life. And so we are constantly looking for ways to figure out new processes and to set stronger and more goals that'll take us to that next level. And so we devour this kind of stuff. We love it. So we're going to go over there and check that out. Bobby, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, giving us your story, helping us to understand these light bulbs sitting in the Sunday afternoon chair, how we can reach our full potential. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for rocking it.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it as well. It's been exciting.
Hey gang, what do you think of a guy who has had his hands in 21 different companies? I thank Bobby again for his time and his wisdom. My key takeaways from today's episode. When he said, give me a chance, here he is 20 years old. His father just passed away. He's inheriting a business that has a ton of debt and not a whole lot of revenue. He's looking at the bank. He's looking at these bankers. They're saying, no way, ain't going to cut it. And here is a guy who said, give me a chance. And in life as leaders, this is what we've got to be. This is what we have to do. Give me a chance and then go out and earn that respect. Go out there and make them happy that they lent you money or bet on you or participate or stayed on or took a pay cut so that you could grow to the next level. Give me a chance. The second key takeaway is don't behave like the boss's son. As Bobby comes in, he's this young man, he's going out on his first ride, and his dad says, look, don't behave like an entitled brat. Don't behave like you have this expectation of success and this expectation of value just because you're the boss's son. Go out there and work hard. Make a name for yourself. And as leaders, we got to do this. Can't ride the coattails of those who come before us. We have to make our own paths. And finally, what got you here ain't going to get you there. The things that got you to where you are today are not the things that are take you to the next level. If you want to go to the next level, you're going to have to make some hard decisions. You're going to have to change some operations. We've talked in the past about this 10x growth. If you want to 1x your growth, you can make a few adjustments, right? You can get up a little earlier. You can stay up a little later. You can do a few things, make an extra call to build 1x growth. But if you, like me, want to make 10x growth, we got to do something different. We got to go out there and really take this world on and do something that will really give us exponential growth, really make a difference. Remember, all the notes from this episode are going to be over on the website, jakeacarlson.com/ML22 for Modern Leadership 22. And before we go, a couple of reminders. Have you picked up July's book club book? Have you read it yet? I have, and this is one that you're going to want to read. The book is Disrupt Yourself by Whitney Johnson. And as I mentioned during the episode, she's going to be on the show in a couple of episodes. If you've got a question for her, let me know. I'll see if we can work it in. Also, have you taken the free leadership superpower assessment? Bobby referred to that. His came out as a problem-solving superpower. If you haven't taken the assessment, find out if you're a confidence superpower or accountability, adaptability, influence, or like Bobby, a problem solver. It's free and it's over on the website. And finally, are you an elite achiever? Then you should get involved in the Elite Achiever Academy, where we are 10xing our businesses and our lives. And again, found on the website. See how easy I make it? Just head over jakeacarlson.com. Get all the good stuff. It's all sitting over there. I will see you on the website. But until I do, have a great day, make a great life, give yourself a chance, and stay awesome. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.